buildings destroyed, families attacked, 7,000 innocent Ukrainians killed. Have you heard of the war in Ukraine? If you have, I bet you have heard of all the destruction it is causing. But have you heard of how it impacts the sport industry? Well, I'm your host, Hannah Lantine, and today we will be taking a look at how the war in Ukraine has impacted the sports industry and athletes around the world. Currently, there is a war between Ukraine and Russia. This has caused a big debate. The debate is trying to decide whether Russian athletes should be allowed to compete in the 2024 Olympics. That's not the only part. When the war first started, Russia used Belarus to hold their army vehicle and troops. This caused the International Olympic Committee, otherwise known as the IOC, to bring up the idea of banning Russian and Belarusian athletes from the 2024 Olympics. But as the war kept going, the IOC started questioning their decision because it brought up the idea that it could be a form of discrimination. This was thought because not letting an athlete compete just based on what country they are from is kind of discriminating. This is how the Olympics are dealing with the war against Ukraine and Russia, but I wonder how other sport events are responding to it. Not only has the Olympics had to deal with the decision whether or not to let Russian and Belarusian athletes compete, but other sporting events too. The final decision was made. Russia would be banned from the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. So why won't the Olympics just ban them? Well, it's not that simple. When Russia was banned from the World Cup, it didn't only impact the athletes, but also impacted other things, such as restaurants. On the week of the World Cup, bars are usually packed with fans from all over. But this World Cup season, it was different. The bars were bare and Russian fans were sad. Although Russian athletes couldn't compete, some would still watch. The ban of Russian athletes did not stop FIFA from broadcasting the tournament for around $40 million to Russian state channels. The Olympics still have not been decided if they are going to ban Russia and Belarusian athletes yet, which makes me wonder how or how not will the Olympics be similar or not to the World Cup. The clock is ticking. Russian and Belarusian athletes have not been banned, but the IOC needs to make a final decision. Russian and Belarusian athletes have started to qualify and the war isn't stopping them. This has been a very hard decision for the IOC because they are facing shame about the idea of discrimination. The IOC doesn't want to discriminate against anyone in any way, but they also don't support the idea of war. They need to make a decision before it's too late. After learning this made me come up with a question. What are the other options other than banning the athletes? Well, I found that there are other solutions other than banning the Russian and Belarusian athletes from the 2024 Olympics. One option that they have came up with is to let Russian and Belarusian athletes compete under a neutral flag. This is a good idea because it's letting the athletes compete but still not supporting what the countries did in relation to the war going on. The IOC still hasn't made a decision on whether Russian and Belarusian athletes should be able to compete or not, but I think the athletes should be able to compete under a neutral flag. What do you think? I'm your host, Hannah Lantine, and thank you for listening.